It is another interesting time to be with you today on your weekly business magazine program, The Portfolio, on ATN News 24, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji, and our focus on this episode is on financing the 2019 budget through tax-generated revenue. But just before we move into the discussion of the day, Comfort Amado is standing by with the news making the rounds in the business circle. Hello, Comfort.
Good.
Welcome back. Now, with a total budget size of 8.92 trillion naira for the 2019 fiscal year, a major area of concern for the 2019 Appropriation Act is the potential adverse effect on the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan (ERGP) and the need to finance the budget through the non-oil revenue. Hence, the mandate on revenue-generating agencies to beef up efforts in improving the country's gross domestic produce through radical revenue mobilization approach. Now, one of such is on tax generation, and for most developed countries, tax revenue is an integral part of revenue generation for both capital and recurrent expenditures, and hence our focus on today's episode of the program. And I have with me in the studios to look at financing the 2019 budget through tax-generated revenues, Oluwaseun Kadri. He is a legal practitioner and a tax expert. Many thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So first of all, looking at the budget size and the current tax to GDP ratio, yes. What can be done to improve upon the current status?
A lot needs to be done to improve the current status. Over the years, we have always had problems of funding our budget, and that doesn't seem like that would disappear anytime soon.
Yes.
However, we have been making a lot of progress. The present administration of Babatunde Fowler leading FRS and also the other revenue agencies have done tremendously well. I must give kudos to them, and they have made unprecedented measures in order to shore up the revenue base for the country. However, there's still a lot more that needs to be done, and we need to take taxes more seriously. And over the years, we have not taken that as serious as we should, and it's becoming a very difficult approach because it's not our tax culture to pay taxes. But now I think the government is very aware that we cannot keep funding the budget with borrowings, and because that's not sustainable. So we have to do something very, very holistic this time around.
When you say put in serious efforts, in tax revenue, yes. I remember that in the first tenure of this present Buhari administration, a lot of efforts were made to encourage people, yes. To go into tax payments and all of that, vis-a-vis the VADs, introduction of VADs, yeah. and all of that. So, but in what practical ways can tax serve as a major revenue source, for the country aside from oil revenue?
Yes, taxes are just taking the front burner in our country, and you can't expect a magic wand in a very short period of time. It takes time. So what we need to do is, we have seen a lot of short-term strategies and some long-term strategies as well. We have seen some quick wins, just as you mentioned. The VADS program was a quick win. We need the quick win as much as we need the long-term strategies in order to ensure that this revenue doesn't just come this year and stops coming in subsequent years. So it has to be a progressive approach and sustainable approach as well. And if you look at so many unprecedented measures from FRS last year, they did a whole lot. Like the VADS program, like freezing of bank account of taxpayers with over 1 billion turnover, aggressive tax audit, enforcement of taxes. They have done tremendously well. They have introduced a lot of measures as well with respect to paying your taxes via ICT, ensuring that you can pay taxes at your convenience all over the world. So those are measures that on the short run is going to increase the tax revenue. On the long run, it's also going to ensure that these taxes are sustainable. For example, also the JTB just harmonized the tax database, and ensuring that there's a single tax database in the country. These are a very Herculean task to achieve within a very short period of time, but we need to do so much more. For example, all hands has to be on deck in order to ensure that this tax revenue drive is, put at the front burner. You can't leave it all to the revenue agencies alone. The legislature has a lot of work to do because our laws are very stale. Like the VAT, for example, is value-added tax, which is based on consumption. Consumption is very high. Whether we like it or not in Nigeria, we're going to consume, and that, for example, needs a very holistic reform. And it has to start from the law, because taxes cannot be imposed on individuals except, there is a law that says that those taxes should be imposed. So we need to go to the background. We need to deal with the foundational problems, of taxes in this country, and I'm sure would make a lot of progress.
All right, so one other very important area that of concern is tax remittance. Most government agencies and, of course, individual organizations are into collecting of taxes for one purpose or the other, vis-a-vis the VAT you just mentioned. And these taxes are not remitted appropriately and adequately as it should be. So in what way can it be regulated? And as a legal practitioner, are there laws that are already existing of ways to get people like this?
Firstly, VAT has always been a big problem when it comes to remittance. A lot of people at times don't charge VAT at all. Why some charge it but they don't remit it? So it has been a reoccurring problem. However, FRS has worked tremendously well when it comes to collection of VAT and withholding taxes with government contractors. They have worked very well to ensure that also contractors that work for state governments to remit their taxes as a when due. They are they are integrating technology in order to ensure that these taxes are gotten at source. That's that for contractors, for example. For companies as well, they have been working really hard, to ensure that companies remit their VAT as a due time. But they have a couple of challenges. For example, the value-added tax, because it's very old, it doesn't catch up with the test of time. It doesn't give room for collection of VAT automatedly. You understand? So there are very many instances where your transaction are being consummated and VAT should be charged at that point. But because they don't have the room to automate VAT collection, it's giving them a lot of drawbacks. So, and they cannot do that without the backing of the legislature. So the law itself has to be reviewed. For example, look at the digital economy. The digital economy is very big. There are a lot of transactions that go on daily basis without even being charged VAT, just probably because they can't even get the people that are consummating these transactions because they are all going on online. So we need to revamp the VAT Act. We need to ensure that we have a proper enforcement mechanism in place as well, in order to ensure that we show up all the revenue possible from VAT.
I'd like you to hold your thoughts a little longer on the issue of the tax laws and all of that. And then look at, moving forward, what can be done, to change the trend and get these people, encourage tax payment.
Basically, tax is a pecuniary body, and it's compulsory for individuals to perform their civic responsibility towards the government. So even without encouragement per se, it is your responsibility. And if you don't do that, there's going to be a detriment factor. Like you probably be punished for that. It's either you pay penalties, you pay interest, or you even be prosecuted for that, So by virtue of that alone, you should compel people to pay taxes, and coupled with the fact that we have a lot of problems in the country. Infrastructural deficit is a huge problem. Look at everybody clamoring, wanting more. For example, the minimum wage issue from last year. Where are they going to get the money from? So we need to work together with the government to ensure that they deliver these services. And taxes is not something that gives a direct benefit to individuals. For example, I'm sure your own taxes are removed from your payroll directly, but it doesn't mean you will get a direct benefit. But if you get on the roads in Abuja, I'm sure you enjoy them if you have a car. If you go to your house and you sleep at night, I'm sure you want to sleep with your two eyes closed. So those are benefits that you get from paying taxes, and it's quite important for Nigerians to pay taxes.
One very other important area is, you did mention it in passing, the issue of personal income tax, as a way of improving the tax revenue. unfortunately, in Nigeria, the personal income tax seems it's basically for civil servants
Yes.
alone and public
Yes.
servants. Then
Yes.
those who are in the private sector,
Yeah.
in what ways can we get them, to be part of the personal income tax?
Very well. Personal income tax is very big, but the major challenge we are having with personal income tax is simply because of the very large informal sector we have. You know, the majority of, for example, last year, for example, there were over 14 million taxpayers from PIT, personal income tax,
Yeah.
whereas there's as much as 70 million active, economically active individuals that should actually pay those taxes. So you can imagine over 50 million people are not actually paying those taxes. So you have to start asking yourself, then what's the problem? And the solution can be that we integrate information technology with collection of personal income taxes. And the way it can be done is simply to ensure that you integrate people's BVN with their tax identification numbers, and you also ensure that third parties collect taxes on behalf of the government. For example, if you're an individual, you go to a company and you get contracts from there, you ensure that that company deducts the necessary taxes from that individual, because the individual is not easy to get at a spot. So you ensure that you do third-party collection, third-party help the government to collect those taxes where they can, and you also integrate data, big data. You integrate it and you mine it in order to get the necessary taxes from people.
When you say third party collecting taxes,
Yes.
does that not amount to multiple taxation?
No, what that is that it's like withholding tax for the government.
Yes.
So the law provides for that in an instance where a party gets contract from maybe a company. The law allows the company to actually withhold a percentage of that tax on behalf of the individual. Then when the individual approaches the tax authority to pay his taxes, they give him a tax credit for that tax that company has already withheld. So it's backed by the law, and it's just a simple strategy to ensure that people outside the tax net are captured one way or the other.
Let's talk about tax evasion and tax avoidance.
Yes.
How can governments begin to clamp down on defaulters of tax evasion and tax avoidance?
There's been a lot of...
I'm sure they are not. Both of them seem alike, but I'm sure they're
very
two
different.
Yes.
They're two very different things. Tax evasion is actually criminal, while tax avoidance is not criminal. Tax avoidance is a situation where companies take advantage of the loopholes in the tax law. So what can you do? Both tax evasion and tax avoidance, they're immoral. So what the government can do is to be a step ahead of the taxpayer. Like in England, for example, if you're having any tax scheme, like a tax scheme is when a corporate entity or an individual tries to take advantage of the loopholes in the tax laws. You are entitled. You must disclose such scheme to the government. And that's because the government wants to be a step ahead of you. Once you disclose that scheme and they say that they are losing a lot of revenue from that, then they go back to the legislator. They fix that gap in order to ensure that that loophole is being closed. So tax evasion also is also on a global stage. Where a lot of multinationals, they move profit from low tax jurisdiction, from higher tax jurisdiction to low tax jurisdiction. FRS has been doing wonderfully well. They are putting a lot of measures in place. The transfer pricing regulation, for example, the country by country reporting. These are various tools that are used to curb multinational enterprise from shifting profits from Nigeria to other tax jurisdictions, and from curbing all those sharp practices that they've been engaging in for so many years now. So they are doing a very good job, and I believe with time we'll probably not be having multinationals shifting profits in Nigeria.
To what percentage do you think in the next 5 years, with the current momentum,
Yes.
we're seeing our tax systems, to what percentage do you see tax to GDP ratio?
Yes, I see us moving from the current about 6%.
Yes.
I see us moving by another 6%, which is 12%.
Yes.
And for a company to thrive economically, you need to be around the average of 15%. So in the next 5 years, I see us moving from 6 to around 12, 13%. And I believe that's a good start for us. Because, for example, now we're able to fund the budget by 5% last year. If our tax to GDP ratio increases by another half, we'll be able to do at least 70 to 75%, which is equally very good for us.
Yes.
And reduce the burden of us having to borrow every now and then. in order to fund the budget. And with time, we'll have a sustainable source of revenue from taxes.
Is it sustainable to talk about plugging the leakages in our tax system?
Absolutely. You can't create an efficient tax system without blocking leakages. For example, if our borders are very porous, there are a lot of taxes that should have come in through legitimate borders. But if your borders are porous, a lot of tax revenues are going to escape from there. If you look at also this single treasury account, for example, you can imagine the amount, the volume of transactions that would have been, that would have been lost by government if that policy wasn't implemented. I'm still aware that there are still some institutions that have not fully complied, with the TSA program, and I believe the government should work holistically to ensure that everybody complies fully with that.
All right, just in a way of rounding up, is there need for a change in our tax policy statement? So you were talking earlier about our tax laws.
Yeah, there's no need for change in the tax policy for now. I have absolute confidence in the previous administration, this present administration, yes, that they worked on the revised national tax policy. Wonderful policy direction, you understand? So it's just for us to be consistent with that policy and to stick strictly by it. But our laws has to be reviewed. We have no option than to review those very stale and old laws that cannot catch up with the test of time. Once we do that, our foundation is going to be solid, and we can always build a good thing on something, because you cannot build something on nothing and expect it to stand. So I believe with that, we'll be stronger when it comes to our revenue base.
All right, thank you very much. I've been speaking with Oluwaseun Kadiri. He is a legal practitioner and a tax expert. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
We do hope you come some other time.
Absolutely, I will.
All right, it's now time to join Bosede Ebel for the Capital Market Review segment. Do stay with us.